Night Anime Recap. Once upon a time, the land of Hinamoto was ruled by humans. But one day, powerful demons known as the Kishin descended from the sky. With their overwhelming power, they turned all humans into their servants and destroyed kingdoms. Only a brave group of warriors stood against these demons, determined to fight for their freedom, the Band of Bushi. They have kept up the fight for generations, waiting for a goddess to possess the boy who will become the demon god to save humanity. Today, everyone has blindly chosen to follow the Kishin, believing the Bunshin to be a violent force intent on destroying the world. Except for Musashi, a young boy that was impressed by Kojiro's remarkable sword fighting skills. Kojiro always felt a deep sadness and emptiness inside of him as he was persecuted for his father's past as a Bushi warrior. But Musashi saw something special in him, and his father Gyasa. Instead of shunning him, the two families became close friends. However, Musashi's life changed drastically when his beloved parents suddenly became ill and passed away. His uncles despised him for his friendship with a Bushi, but they took him in. They rarely gave him food, and even when he was trying to be a good boy by bringing his uncle the lunch he had forgotten, they still beat him. Musashi felt so unloved and hated, not only by his family but also by everyone in town. But one day, Musashi's aunt gave him a chance to prove himself. To be accepted by everyone. She asked him to throw a stone at Gyasa and tell him to die. Musashi did as he was asked. But instead of feeling accepted, he felt tremendous guilt. His conscience overwhelmed him with sadness, and he was unable to shake off the regret of betraying someone who had always been kind and caring to him. Musashi's unbearable guilt led him to Jisai's house, where he begged for forgiveness. The old man accepted his apology with a heartwarming smile. He knew that Musashi had saved both him and Kojiro. The rest of the world hated and rejected them, but Musashi and his family opened their arms and hearts to them, offering love and support. So, when the old man saw the desolated kid, he decided to take him in and raise him as his own child. Musashi and Kojiro grew up together, closer than ever, and Jisai was there to teach them the true story, and how to fight. However, one day, Musashi was forced to witness their own village executing Jisai, traumatizing both boys. This only made the kids determined to keep his teachings alive, and promised to create the strongest Bushi band to carry on Jisai's legacy with strength and courage. Several years later, Musashi had become the top student at the mining training school. Just before the graduation ceremony, he went to Kojiro asking him to start their own Bushi band. But Kojiro refused it. He didn't want Musashi to suffer from the same discrimination as he does. The miner school forces Musashi to yell about wanting to serve the Oni, lesser demons, as a miner. And for that reason, Kojiro never thought Musashi was serious about becoming a Bushi. All students graduated and headed to the Oni mining gate, ready to serve the demons. But before they could pass through the entrance, the guard took away their weapons. As they entered, one of the students gets eaten by an Oni. After witnessing firsthand the human slaves mining for Oni monsters until their last breath, the students knew immediately that they had been fed lies all this time. At that moment, Musashi determinedly exposed himself and revealed his dream of becoming a Bushi to slay all demons. In response, an Oni monster moved toward Musashi. With no weapon to defend himself, Musashi courageously picked up an ordinary pickaxe and struck the creature, despite being pushed away. With determination in his eyes, Musashi swung at Oni again, but the monster overpowered him. Before Oni could use its sharp claws to slash Musashi, Kojiro charged forward on a motorbike and struck the monster's head from behind. He returns Musashi's pickaxe, along with the textbook he dropped at home, where he mentions how he's secretly training and his determination to become a Bushi. That's why Kojiro came to save him. He thought Musashi was joking, but he's been doing everything he can to become someone Jisai can be proud of. Musashi leaped over the Oni and with one swift stroke of his pickaxe, he cut it in half. Multiple Onis suddenly appear and surround the two kids. Refusing to back down, the two friends use their sword technique to strike down their enemies. Suddenly, a bright light illuminates the sky, signaling the Kishin's descent. As the chaos ensues, the students are targeted by demons. Determined to save them, Kojiro drives Kitetsuki towards the enemy while Musashi sits on the back, slaying Oni one by one. The two then drove towards the Kishin, and with the help of his pickaxe, Musashi courageously cuts the Kishin in half. The demon starts regenerating and revives. It devours the offerings of slave miners and worshipping villagers, transforming into a demonic form with multiple hands. Musashi is knocked out by the sudden attack, leaving Kojiro to face the monster alone. The demon then tries to steal Kojiro's katana because they love to eat swords. But the determined young boy refuses to give in, believing that the katana is a symbol of the Bushi's pride. The creature pinned him down with its fingers, and the pain was unbearable. Kojiro's grip weakened, and the Kishin was able to pull the sword away to devour it. Upon witnessing this, Musashi was filled with determination and rage. He knew how much the katana meant to Kojiro. He climbed onto the Kishin's belly and started slamming it with his pickaxe. The Kishin tries to hit Musashi, but he dodges it, leaving the force of the strike to impact on the creature's belly instead. The Kishin cried out in pain, losing consciousness and causing Musashi to fall inside its belly. But moments later, Musashi emerged from the belly, with the sword in hand, and returned it to Kojiro. Musashi's act reminded Kojiro of his father, and with a determined resolve, he joined Musashi's mission to form a Bushi band. Suddenly, a large fortress broke through the Oni gate. Out from the fortress stormed a band of Bushi riding their bikes. They breached every defense barrier set by Oni and surrounded the Kishin, who had just regained consciousness. Their captain Takeda ordered them to retreat to a safe place, but Musashi refused to go. Despite the danger, he was determined to risk his life and rush forward to kill the Kishin, yet he was unable to damage the monster. The Bushi band captured Musashi and brought him to their camp. Naotora then firmly explained to Musashi that he could not defeat the Kishin alone, as they were barely able to restrain the demon. But Musashi refuses to let his first win be taken from him. He forcibly breaks the restrictive barrier rope, freeing himself and racing to the battlefield. The Kishin was surrounded by Bushi warriors, who were using katetsu swords forged from Oni to restrict the Kishin's movement. They can only kill the Kishin by destroying its horn. Musashi slammed the ground, causing a landslide, allowing the monster to dodge Bushi's attack and break free. Musashi then jumped onto the monster and used his pickaxe to slash the horn. But his weapon broke, as only Katetsu's weapons could kill the Oni. Musashi was unable to defend himself from Oni's fire attack. But Naotora swooped in to save the day, slashing the horn with his Katetsu sword. The Kishin exploded, and the Takeda band raised their swords to absorb the Kishin's powers. Tadida speaks of Bushi's impossible dream of unifying the nations, inspiring everyone with hope and possibility. As they witness the joy of the people, Musashi and Kojiro come to realize that Jisai's stories were indeed true. Musashi confronts Takeda for taking away his first victory. Impressed by Musashi's boldness, Takeda gives him a crystal as a sign of respect. Musashi later discovered that the crystal was the key to seeing the Oni and finding his next Kishin. With that knowledge in mind, he and Kojiro set off the next day to unite the country and take down all Oni. On their journey, they met Tsugumi, a young girl who had been suffering under an abusive father. But when they saved her, and Tsugumi gratefully joined them on their journey. An Oni steals Kojiro's sword while everyone is sleeping. But Musashi catches sight of the monster and immediately begins the chase. He takes a spear and strikes the horn, but nothing happens. He arrives at a place filled with katanas and notices Shiro, who asks him if he wants to borrow one. Suddenly, he spots an Oni trying to eat Kojiro's sword. Without hesitation, he grabs a sword, and crystals start to grow out of his body. He pushes the overwhelming sensation aside and uses the power of the blade to defeat the Oni. The sword begins to absorb the Oni's power, but then it shatters. Kojiro and Tsugumi arrive, but Shiro and the swords are nowhere to be found. Musashi is unable to explain to his friends what just happened. Tsugumi informs them that they need their Kitetsu swords, and she leads them to the nearest sword auction. At the auction, several Bushi warriors compete to get their hands on the Kitetsu swords. The smith explains the sword chooses its master based on his potential as a Bushi. Those who prove themselves worthy will be granted a glowing color based on the strength of their soul. There are 5 colors, ranging from white, the weakest, to red, the strongest. Kojiro picks up his blade and finds out the trial is about overcoming his past, getting a blue color. Musashi then picks up his selected sword, and he relieves the trauma of Jisai's last moment again. Suddenly, a girl appears and tenderly wraps her arms around him, offering a warm embrace. She suddenly transformed into a beast and told him she no longer needed him. At that moment, his whole body filled with black crystals and a black aura. The test had failed. No matter how many times he tried, the same thing kept happening. Deeply disappointed, the smith explained to him that those with black auras couldn't use a Kitetsu blade, as they were rejected by it. Musashi's dream was crumbling before his eyes, as he couldn't beat the Oni without a Kitetsu sword. Suddenly, a Kishin descended from the sky accompanied by lesser Oni monsters. Before Musashi could be killed, Kojiro appeared and uses his blue aura Kitetsu sword to slash the Oni's horn. The celebration of Kojiro's first kill was a joyous one, but Musashi felt left out. The Bushi warriors then set off for the mountain to slay the Kishin. But Musashi's friends leave him behind because he cannot protect himself. Shiro appears to comfort Musashi in his time of need. He's a Bushi warrior who betrayed humanity and fights for the Kishin. He wants to capture and possess the obsidian goddess, and he suspects it is within Musashi. To gain Musashi's trust, Shiro tells a lie about also having a black aura. Shiro declares that he must use the power of the black stones to become stronger, but Musashi refuses to believe him. Shiro demonstrates his strength by slicing through the ground with his sword, creating a large, deep pit. Musashi is astonished by the sheer power Shiro has within him, not from the sword, but from his own body, but he still doesn't trust him. Shiro suddenly throws him into the pit with the Kitetsu blade, to force him to accept the power of the black stones. Musashi awoke, finding himself trapped in an empty void alongside the mysterious girl. She introduced herself as the obsidian goddess, and tells she wants to trap Musashi in this world forever, so that Shiro could not obtain her power. Musashi refused, but the goddess reminded him of the time he threw a stone at Jisai. At that moment she saw he was unworthy of becoming a Bushi, as he saw everything as a means to an end, a way to survive and be accepted by his friends. The goddess' words struck deep within Musashi's heart, and his body begins to turn into a crystal. Suddenly, Musashi was pulled out of the pit by Nanao, Shiro's subordinate. Fortunately, he was still alive, as the top half of his body was still normal. This meant that his transformation wasn't complete, allowing him to survive. He thanked Nanao for the help and set off towards the mountain, knowing that his friends may be in danger against the Kishin. On his way, Musashi tells the goddess that as a Bushi, he has the strength to protect those important to him. This declaration convinces the goddess to withhold judgment on Musashi. The black stones and aura that surrounded him began to dissipate, indicating that he was neither rejected nor accepted. Musashi bursts onto the battlefield, interrupting a fight between the Bushi and Shiro. He quickly realizes Shiro's sinister plan to absorb everyone's sword powers. Without a moment's hesitation, Musashi joins his friends in the fight. Nanao steps forward, her gaze focused on Musashi as she prepares to capture the goddess. Nanao turns her blade into 7 flying swords and launches an attack on the trio. Musashi quickly uses his blade to deflect swords coming his way, then rushes forward and draws his sword technique to launch himself at her. But she uses the remaining swords to push him back. With no option left, the trio decides to break Nanao's swords to break through her defense. The trio split up and Nanao threw a sword at Musashi to keep him from running away. Musashi, however, was using himself as bait, allowing Tsugumi to capture the sword while he slashed it in half. Shiro stepped forward to fight instead of relying on his weak subordinate. He activated the blade ring and swung it, creating a large glowing cube that surrounded the whole area and flipped the mountain upside down. Some people managed to avoid falling by sticking their blades into the roof. Shiro then proceeded to mock the Bushi, saying they were too weak to fight alone and needed to rely on groups. With that, he demonstrated his own strength by making his opponents fall with a single blow. As Musashi falls, time stops as the obsidian goddess appears. She tells him Jisai was once her vessel, but he died before completing his mission. She wants to save Musashi, but he refused her proposal because his friends would die if he accepted. She was moved by his passionate plea to save his comrades, and so she entrusted her powers to Musashi, taking over his body. The time starts flowing again, and the goddess possesses Musashi's body, transforming his appearance. The goddess then created a gigantic crystal atop the mountain, and with a single gesture, she took Shiro's sword and restored everything to its original state. Nanao steps forward and attacks the goddess with her blades. But the goddess repulses them. The goddess explained that those with black crystals possess the power to either attract or repel blade energy. Something Musashi does not comprehend, thus failing to use Kitetsu blades. She reveals her powers are weakening, since her materialization in the real world, and she must return to sleep and end the battle quickly. To end the battle, the goddess summoned the powerful energies of the Bushi blades, combining them into a single destructive force. With a mighty swing, she unleashed an attack of immense power, obliterating Shiro and everything in its path. Musashi returned to his normal form and the sword he used shattered into pieces. After the battle is over, Musashi decided to take the sword trials again, and all hoped that he would succeed this time. Tsugumi then noticed that he was trying with the same sword he had been failing with. But the smith revealed that it was the best blade in the world. When it was time for the trial, Musashi picked up his blade. And it starts to glow bright red, said to be the color of the strongest warrior.